For our last Python program, what we're going to be doing is using something called an array. And an array is nothing more than a table or columns and rows of information that we want to store, save, and then possibly use later in the program. Also in this program, we're going to change the way we limit the number of times the program's repeated. So let's take a look at Programming Tutorial 4. Notice under number 1 it says instead of having a fixed number of cars to process, we're going to let the user tell us how many cars to process. So they could put in 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever they chose to do. And then secondly, the program will be saved in an array, which is also called a table, and we'll print out at the end of the program all of our output. So in your previous program, what you were doing was inputting the information, and then it was printing out right after that. This time it's going to print after you're all done, after you've entered all of the input data. You're going to have the same input as you had in the previous program. The program is going to create the car mileage report, and in that car mileage report you're going to have the same kind of information as you did before. But notice now here on the program output it says a row of column titles. So we're going to have the output in a tabular or column type of format, and then we're going to list the information under that column for the particular car. Alright, when you create the program this time, you're going to be using the shell that you can access through the tutorial, and it kind of looks like this. You've got the places where you're going to put in your information. You'll have several new variables in this program, and you're also going to have 2 loops. One loop, the very first one, I've actually put in here. So it says cars rented, input, enter number of cars to be rented, limit of 3. You could say a limit of 5, 6, whatever you chose to do, but we're just saying 3 to make it easier. So here's our first for statement. Remember in the for statement, the word for starts at the left margin, and then every statement below that must be tabbed in or spaced in. Please don't use tabs, it's really spaces. The same number of spaces, which determines the loop. And I haven't put the code in here yet, but that's where it will be. And then down here is our second for loop, which is actually at the end of the program. So this for loop is going to print the car 1, car 2, car 3, whatever you have, and then it's going to fall through and print a summary report. So we have 2 loops here. Let's take a look at the program. Let me bring that over. Alright, so you can see now that this program, let's make it a little wider here. This program has new variables, and you can see that the variables that we used before now have a left bracket, some zeros, and a right bracket. So now we're saying car type consists of 3 separate boxes, or their entries in the table. Then we're going to store car 1, car 2, and car 3, such as Ford, Chevrolet, and Honda. And the same thing for the total miles, the miles per gallon, and the car message. These are all components of the array. Alright, well, you print the title for your report. That's just like you did it before. But now we'll come down here, and the new statement in this program is where you say get user input. We come down here where it says cars rented, input the number of cars rented. So here's where we're going to put the limit in here. So the for statement will be determined how many times it repeats based on what you put in here. And then it comes down here, and the for statement says car index. And car index is going to be started at 1, and the range is cars rented. So up here you put in a value like 3, and if that's the case, there would be a 3 here, and it would repeat this loop 3 times. Alright, so we have the same kind of input. Where it's a little bit different when we get down here to do the calculations, actually notice, alright, so we have the same type of input. Well, notice now that car type has a subscript in it, and it says left bracket, car index, right bracket, because we're going to be holding 3 car names in this program, and we need to have them in the array. Also down here in the calculated values, we have total miles, car index, because we're saving total miles again in the array, so we can print it out at the end. And then the rest of the statement that you know about. Miles per gallon is the same way. You notice it's going to be indexed, so it has the brackets and car index. Same thing goes down here in the if statement. We've got miles per gallon, we've got car index, and then car message is car index because we have to save 3 messages. Alright, once that loop is completed, you've inputted 3 cars, the program falls through and it finds these print statements, and they're at the left margin, so they're outside of the previous loop. Notice now the print statement looks a little different. It's got a %, -18, S for string, and then a string constant make of car. This 18 refers to the left margin of the printed area that we're going to print our report in. And so basically it says come to the left margin and print the words make of car. Move over 18 spaces and print miles driven. And then move over 18 more and print miles per gallon. And then finally move over 18 more and print economy. All right, so once the titles are printed, we have our last for loop. And it says for car index in the range of cars rented. Here again, it's going to be 3 in that variable. And we come down here and we're going to start printing the actual information in columns. And notice we have minus 18S. So the car type, let's say it's Honda, will print right under make of car because it has the same indentation. I've changed it here a little bit. I've gone to 15 spaces because I want to center my titles, center the output under the titles. And it says 15D because we're printing a numeric value. It's not a string value. So we have 2 D's here. Be careful about that. The last one is an S because it's going to print a string. All right, so this loop gets completed 3 times because we have 3 cars, and then it falls through the print statement. We get the average MPG, and that's the accumulator divided by the number of cars rented, and then we print out the summary report. Notice we're using the round function here in this last print statement. Average MPG, comma 2 means we want. All right, so we're going to take a look at the completed tutorial 4. This is it. Notice now that the variables up here are changed a bit because we have car type with the 3 zeros indicating that there are 3 entries in the table for car type. And the same goes for total miles, miles per gallon, and car message. Let's run this program and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's asking for the number of cars. I'm going to say 2. And now it's going to give me the prompts that you saw in your previous program. Now notice it didn't print out anything. What it did is it asked for the next car because it took the input that we had from problem in the input for car number 1, and you notice that it did not print out the results. It's actually saving the results in the array and it'll print out at the end of the program. So I'll go ahead and put in car number 2. It finishes the program and it prints out the output. Notice we have the titles, make of car, miles driven, miles per gallon, and economy. So those are the column titles that we have. So we have column or output is what it's referred to. Then we have a blank line, we have Honda, and notice how the totals are spaced pretty good or centered under the titles. That was because I used a different number than the 18. And I just kind of ran the program a couple of times, changing that number until I got what I wanted. It prints out the summary report, 2 cars processed with an average mileage value of 70.71. Okay, let's take a look at problem 4. On the left-hand side of the screen, I've got the tutorial 4, and on the right, I've got problem 3 is complete. So we know in problem 4, we have to have variables set up as an array. So let's take a look at student name over here on the right. It's set up right now with just a blank entry for 1 entry. So I'll come over here and I'll copy this and take the array type and paste it in right here. So now you see student name is set up as an array type and it can hold up to 3 names. We're printing out 3 things at the end, so we have to have 3 more of those. We have to have one for pass message, so let's paste it in there. And we have to have one in for total score because that's the other one we were going to save. All right, so now we've got the 3 array entries. We come down here, we're going to have some new variables. I'll let you put those in. And then as we go down inside the program, we're going to have 2 for loops. So here, where we came in and just said for student index and range of 3, we've got to change that. Instead, what we want to do is come over here, and like we did with the tutorial, we're going to ask them to make an entry. So if I were you, I'd just copy that over and I put it right up here in this entry and change the text of it. So that kind of gives you a start on this problem, and I'll go ahead and run it in a minute. We'll take a look and see what it should look like. All right, I've loaded problem 4, and I'll go ahead and say run the module, see what it looks like here. I'll bring that over. All right, so it's asking for how many students, and I'll just put in 2 here. and her scores. All right, so here we're getting student number 2, no output yet because the output has been put into the array. So we can see that it's being stored here. And after this score is entered, it will run the program. So it ends up printing the column titles of student name, total score, pass, no pass, and then it lines up Mary, her score, and her pass. So these are based on 18 spaces. So Mary starts at the left margin, and 18 spaces over we have the score, and then 18 more we have over here we have the yes. So that's how we are going to approach problem 4. Hope this helps you.